Hello, and a warm, extravagant welcome to the first ever preview sponsored by the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network. This is an exciting reveal because it features an exhibit which itself is first of a kind. The collective ordination of Loey, Jody, and I into the Christian ministry in 1978. 1978. Wow, it's been a while. I am Stacy Cusulos, and it is with deep gratitude for Mark Bowman, executive coordinator of this network, and also the person who envisioned this exhibit, and Lindsay Alley, the archivist and curator who took our many non-digital materials and set them into motion into a beautiful display that you will see in just a little bit. Lindsay and Mark worked very hard on this exhibit, and we are very grateful to the two of them. I'm also pleased to say that Loey, Jody, and I were able to contribute by offering letters, papers, and photos, as well as our many memories of that incredibly significant time in our lives.
I'm Jody Parsons, and while you might notice that we are older than we were more than 40 years ago, I can assure you that our spirits are as fierce and feminist now as they were when we first envisioned being ordained. We were all students at Pacific School of Religion in the mid-70s. It was a time of transformation in the realm of theological education, as feminism, Black, Latin American, and gay and lesbian liberation movements were making an impact on religion and theology, as well as on social policies and communities. We were blessed by the Center for Women in Religion at the Graduate Theological Union and by professors who challenged our thinking. It was in this context and because of our own experience of the power of community as women that when we began to consider ordination, we knew we wanted to model our belief that ministry happens within and for the context of community.
Hi, I'm Loey Powell, and you'll notice as you go through some of the materials, if you take a chance to do that, which we hope you do, that you will see that initially there was a group of 5 of us who came together to request in-care status. 2 of those women chose to go their own paths, and it left Jody, Stacy, and I to move through this whole process together. Now, this is an archive on the LGBTQ Trans Religious Archives Network, and even though we were not the very first out lesbians, self-proclaimed out lesbians to be ordained, because we did not officially come out to the Committee on Ministry at the time, that distinguishment belongs to Ann Holmes, who was ordained in 1982 in the Central Atlantic Conference. We were known to be who we were by our seminary community, by those with whom we did ministry, by our church community. Through prayerful consideration, hours and hours of conversation, we decided not to share that part of ourselves with the Committee on Ministry because we knew we were challenging them already with our collective ordination request. We had written our ordination theology paper together, our theology of ministry, which laid out what we believed was behind in our calling into ministry and what informed our understanding of Christian ministry. And we knew that that was going to challenge the Committee on Ministry enough, which it did. But there was a point where we knew that we also might be called out by someone out there who might have some negative feelings about the fact that we called ourselves lesbian at the time. And so we chose to share with our church community, Mill Valley Community Church, who we were and to ask for their continued support of our request for ordination. So we met with them, and through the wonderful leadership of the Reverend Bill Eichhorn and Ann Eichhorn, we went through that process with them, and they unanimously affirmed their continued support of us. So we're forever grateful throughout our whole process for the wisdom and the support of the Eichhorns, their family, and of our church community in Mill Valley.
We hope that you enjoy this exhibit, and we thank you so much for your support of the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network, because it ensures that stories like ours can be preserved for generations to come. And now Mark will take it and start to explain how to walk through this exhibit. Take it, Mark.
Such a treat to work with Jody and Stacy and Loey. The LGBTQ Religious Archives Network is so proud to collaborate with Joey, Loey, and Stacy on this Sisterhood is Powerful exhibit. We can only do this because they preserved artifacts, records, correspondence, articles, and photos from 40 plus years ago that we can display as an exhibit that you might see in a museum, only here it is in digital form, online. By presenting these original artifacts, we enable students, scholars, and other interested persons to get a deeper feeling and understanding of what these three remarkable women did and the impact that they had. Before we start the tour of the exhibit, know that you will have the opportunity to participate in this party by asking any questions you may have for Jody, Loey, Stacy, or Lindsay. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a Q&A button. Simply type in your question there and send it on to me. And then after the tour, I'll read some of the questions and we can hear our panelists answer them. Now, I'm pleased to introduce Lindsay Alley, a certified public archivist and a research assistant with LGBTQ Religious Archives Network, who has done the amazing work of curating this exhibit.
All right. Well, thank you all. I'm going to share my screen here so we can start walking through this exhibit. And this exhibit will be live on the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network, along with many other wonderful exhibits that they have. And so I'm going to take you all through sort of quickly. We want you all to come back and really spend some time in this exhibit. There is a lot of wonderful history and photos, and it's really worth spending some time here. So like I said, we're just going to go through, sort of hit some high points, and then it's going to be available, like I said, for you guys to go through at your own pace. And so when you go to the exhibit, the opening page is here. This is where you start, obviously. And when you, with this nice photo right here of the three women, you enter the exhibit. The first page that you go to is sort of background information about the United Church of Christ and the three women that were involved. There's some background here on ordination and the whole process. And then if you go farther down, this will link out to each person's profile. There's a full profile on the RAN website. And so, like I said, you can see all that. And the next page is going to be the in-care and ordination process. And this page is, I will admit, it's very text heavy. There was a lot of documents sort of going back and forth through this whole process. It was an intensive process. And it goes chronologically, so you can see sort of the progression that it took from the initial statement of intent here, which included, like Loey had mentioned, the 5 original candidates for ordination, and then goes through, and then it was the final 3. And each thing, if you click on it, it will blow it up larger size, and that way you can scroll through, read everything, and it sort of goes through in a slideshow format, so you can click on different things and sort of scroll through. And again, it sort of takes you through everything and goes through from early 1977 onward. And just real quick, I will also point out that the ordination paper that they all wrote is here. It's on the website as part of the ordination process page. And I encourage you all to scroll through and read this. This was, I know, just, from working through and talking with the 3 of them, that this was sort of the big hurdle. you know, it was a joint sort of ordination paper that they all wrote together, and it really outlines their beliefs and everything that led them to this point. So it's really important. So I encourage you again to please read through that. And on this page as well, we also have some photos that break up each sort of section here, going throughout. So it's very, like I said, a lot of back and forth, a lot of documents. You know, and obviously in the 1970s, there was not email. It was not an instantaneous sort of process. So it was very labor intensive to go through. And so again, it's all sort of outlined here. At the end, the next page, it will take you to the letters of support. And I like to point out that the very first item here on this page is a postcard from Holly Neer, who was the artist that was singing when you guys were waiting for this to start. And so we have that here. Again, you can sort of scroll through and see different postcards, telegrams, letters that have come in, both from folks here in the United States and abroad. There's one from Sweden that came in. So it's, you know, what Stacy and Loey and Jody were doing, it was not just in California, it was not just in the United States. It reached a much broader audience internationally as well. And so with that, again, there's some quick postcards, telegrams, things like that, but there's also more formal letters of support that really highlight what these three women were doing, and you can read about that here. And like the previous page, there's a little summary next to each item that sort of tells you what it's about. So you can go through there and sort of see, again, all the support that came in for these three ladies. It was wonderful. The next page that the exhibit moves on to after all of this, like I said, we're going through sort of quick, but it was quite an intense process. It takes you, we're here at the ordination service, and you can see sort of the invitation and the program. You know, I didn't even think about it at the time, but you know, when I was putting this together, the ladies were like, oh, we hand drew a lot of the invitation and the program. So it's a really nice, like personal connection, again, that you don't necessarily realize. But yeah, it's just, it really adds to the exhibit, I believe. And then just, like, again, highlights different things, and you can make this full screen and really look at all these items. The charge for each person, Loey, Stacy, and Jody are also here full, and the sermon from Ann Beckett. And then also on this page, we have lots of photos from the actual service, which is fantastic. And each one has a caption. If you hover over the image, it also should tell you, you know, who's in it, and the caption as well. So you can go through and sort of relive the ordination with the photos, which is wonderful. And all these photos, again, were provided by the three women. And so we've now covered the ordination service. So the next page here moves into 1979, sort of, you know, beyond, obviously, the ordination. The New York Times did an article, so it went, you know, from coast to coast, from California on to New York. Again, go through, you can really read each thing and spend some time here. And also on this, after the ordination page, we have some videos. And if you spend even a minute in this exhibit, you will see the name Bill Eichhorn and Eichhorn. They were really instrumental in this whole process from the beginning. And so Reverend Bill Eichhorn was kind enough to do a quick little video. I think it's about 5 minutes, sort of with his recollection of the whole thing and the process. And that's here for everyone to watch. And then below that, is a little bit longer video. It's about 30 minutes. And Mark and I, we were able to sit down sort of earlier on with Stacy, Loey, and Jody and sort of ask questions and go back and get the recollection, you know, from 1978 to 2020 and sort of see where things have gone and come from. And it was a great video. I encourage you to sit down and watch it. And that pretty much, like I said, we're hitting the high points, but this page is probably my favorite just because of the videos and the people reflecting back after all these years. And lastly, we do finish off with credits here. And so that sort of wraps up the exhibit and brings it to a close. Again, thank you. Thank you to Loey, Jody, and Stacy for participating and being so willing to share with us and go back and make this available for everybody. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark, and he'll open it up.
For the amazing work you did in curating this exhibit. This exhibit is truly a dramatic and powerful witness that we want to ensure is seen and studied for years to come by scholar students and young persons curious to learn about those who have gone before. Will you help us do this by making a gift to support the expenses of creating, designing, and maintaining the Sisterhood a Powerful exhibit? During this party or right afterwards, you can go to the LGBTQ-RAN website, and I'll give you a little demonstration here. If you go to the website, and the URL is www.lgbtqreligiousarchives.org. Long word, sorry, it's a lot to type in. You can do a Google search on LGBTQ-RAN and find it. And you simply need to click on the donate button, and there with your credit card in hand, it only takes a minute to make a gift. By making a gift, you are saying, yes, Jody, Loey, and Stacy, I want your valuable contributions to our history to be preserved for future generations. So we thank you for supporting us. I did invite some questions, and at this point, I don't see that anyone has typed in questions, so I will do a couple. And if you have a question you'd like to direct to anybody on the panel, please go ahead and type those in. But we have 22 people on the call, and some of you joined after we sort of got started. So I thought maybe Loey and Jody and Stacy, do you want to share just one recollection? So much happened during those months that all that happened. What's maybe just one particular event that sticks in your mind that was really momentous and was really meaningful for you? And so whichever of you would like to answer that first might go ahead and do that.
Well, this is Jody. I can just say that the Mill Valley Community Church, we had so many meetings at Bill and Ann Eichhorn's house, and I remember a particular communion service, just maybe the 4 or 5 of us in Bill's office, that was so meaningful to me. There were a lot of questions and need for support and trying to figure out our strategy, and it was just sort of supportive to have all of us eating together and singing together and working together with their family and with the church. And I'm just in just looking at the attendees that I see the names, it warms my heart that so many people from our past, at least people that I recognize, are here with us, and I really appreciate your support even now. Loey or Stacy?
This is Loey. I think there were so many moments, and one of the things I did is that I remember we did in the ordination service itself, which was a little longer than some ordination services because there were 3 of us and there were a lot of people involved and engaged. There's that moment where the newly ordained, the 3 of us, officiate at communion for the first time. And I remember us lifting up the elements and Stacy singing in Greek, the Greek Orthodox liturgy for communion, and how powerful that was for her to be able to bring her childhood tradition that she grew up in, but which would not ordain her because they did not ordain women, to bring that to that moment and to share that gift of music and grace with the entire congregation.
Mm. Thanks, Loey and Jody. And I think, you know, the experience that I had going through the process was almost, it was like, it was a very spiritually fed process for so many different reasons. First, there were the three of us who had our friendship, our sisterhood that we shared throughout this. And there were our families who were to varying degrees supportive. Mine struggled a bit, but they did come to the ordination. But I think it was like a time out of time almost. The Greeks have a word called mystikos, which is, it's time out of time. It's that ineffable thing that happens, very difficult to explain, where you're lifted up together and doing the work of the Spirit. And that was really what I felt, and it was beyond us. It really was beyond us. It was something that encompassed a much larger sphere. And as I think back to that, I was so grateful to have been a part of such a thing. And also I'm so grateful to have the relationship today with Jody and Loey. This whole process has been really amazing. And Mark and Lindsay, I thank you so much for making it possible for us to do this. So.
Yeah.
Good, good. Well, let me just, actually, we did not prepare these questions, so I'm putting them on the spot. Looking at the other side, what was the point of struggle for you? What was the point that was kind of edgy for you, where you just thought, this is tough, or this is hard? Where did you feel most challenged back in that time going through that process? Anybody?
Well, for me, there probably were many moments. It was a big disappointment when first one and then the other of the two original of the five of us dropped out for varying reasons. Some just out of fear that they wouldn't get ordained at all because we would fail in this process. So that was hard. But also for me, it took me a long time to find a call. And I was delaying the other two who had received their calls to ministry. And it was months later, half a year later, that, I finally received a call to ministry. So I felt responsible that I was, stuck and delaying a celebration that had been affirmed, but couldn't happen until that call came through. So for me, that was tough.
I think that there were many challenging moments, and I think as Loey said, the dropping out of those other two women was really difficult, and a lot of people suffered, including Bill and Ann Eichhorn, who had put themselves out. So it wasn't easy, but we recovered and proceeded. I think that it was very hard for me to a certain extent with my family, because I was trying to incorporate Greek Orthodoxy into what I was doing, and it was not easy to explain to anybody, especially to my mother and my father, who really did not know what this was about. But that was difficult. It was a difficult thing to come to terms with. But as Loey said, I ran up against the fact that the Greek Orthodox Church does not ordain women, and I'm very glad that I moved on. But it's very hard to cut that part out of yourself. It goes with you and all the things that entails. So I'd say that was probably one of the most difficult challenges for me.
I guess for me, what flashes through was I think we were in the committee to get in-care status, or maybe it was some committee in the conference where one of the ministers, one of the women ministers said, if this is okay, then I may as well just take my wedding ring off. And it was very dramatic, and it was very like shocking. And, you know, we moved on from that, but that's when you ask that question, that's what comes to mind.
Good. We have a couple questions here for you. Jane asks, what did you sing at the ordination service? Music undergirds so much of our struggle. What music do you recall that you used within the service?
Hi, Jane. It's in the service. If you look in the ordination service, we didn't do Singing for Our Lives, but we did Song of the Soul. I think we did sing that.
Williamson, yep.
I don't know what else. I do remember us putting through everybody, after we did communion, we put through everybody through the milk and honey routine too. Remember that? We shared milk and honey with everybody.
You also followed up that with, did you have to submit the service to the committee to be approved? Or could you just do the service? You did the service you wanted to do.
Yes.
Okay, good. And a question from Diane. This is more reflective. So what can we take from this process and what you learned in that process into today's conservative climate? Oh, okay, a little tough. What can we take from what you learned through that process 42 years ago and take that as a word for us that we can remember in today's conservative climate?
Well, what comes to me is there's strength in community. And, you know, I think sticking together and always finding a spiritual community or a community of sisters or like-minded people or people who want to challenge each other, that I wish there were more of that in the church today. Ways of thinking outside of the box, you know, new and different ways of tackling some of our issues and problems, but doing it with other people.
Yeah, I would say that I think that's really the cornerstone for me right now, because this is such a difficult climate to be in. And and I think about what is important in order to both survive and thrive. And I think what Jody said is so important. Other human beings in community together, helping each other to tell the truth, not to sugarcoat, but at the same time offering up hope, and knowing that there are paths forward if we look. And I really believe that it's in that spirit that we can hopefully offer something.
Yeah, and I think for me there is the lesson that while there are traditions and ways of doing things that have been written and followed for a long, long time, there is never a moment when, for very good reason and solid reason, you cannot challenge those rules and those traditions, and just do it. And the power of community and the communal approach of doing it together makes it much more possible to move through those kinds of things that are keeping a vision from happening.
I just want to extend deep appreciation to Stacy, Jody, and Loey for just the witness you did 42 years ago, and for your willingness to stay with us and to share that story today. And it's just such a gift that we can preserve this milestone so that people in the future will do this. And frankly, this is why I love to do the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network, simply because people like you and what you've accomplished will be preserved and those stories will be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mark, I was gonna jump in real quick, not necessarily with a question, but more of a comment, I guess. You know, you and I have both met multiple times with Stacy, Loey, and Jody over the course of getting this exhibit together. And at one point, just sort of in passing, I think it was Jody that had mentioned, like, well, has this even ever been done since? You know, like a joint ordination like this? And if it has, I mean, you know, we haven't really heard of it, so it makes me say it hasn't been done. You know, and in an environment like today where so many things just go viral, you know, and things like that, I mean, I think it just stands as a testament to what these three did, you know, and in that nothing like this has ever really happened since. So I just think that's really special. So I just wanted to throw that out there as a comment and not necessarily a question.
And as we move into our closing, I will just do a shout out on behalf of Deborah to the United Church of Christ for the fact that it allowed this process to happen and for the openness within that community.
Thank you. We want to thank all of you for joining us, and for those who will be viewing this online later, we hope. For those who might watch this decades from now, it'll be great. I noticed that Bill Johnson is on, and want to thank you, Bill, for all that you made possible in 1972 with your ordination process in the same association where we were ordained, Golden Gate Association, Northern California Conference. Much, much love to you, and thank you. And I also want to give a shout out to my spouse, Brenda Joyner, who is the anchor in my life. And all that I learned from this process in the succeeding years until we met, until this day, is just golden. And I love you.
Well, I'm just very warmed by all the participants on this call today and just reminiscing about what we did. And I guess I have a prayer for the continuing church that other collectives like we had would emerge and help move it into the future. And thank you all for making this possible.
And I would just say thank you so much to all of you who took the time to join us today. This preview party, as I said in the very beginning, and Mark also talked about, it's the first of its kind. And we know it's not going to be the last of its kind. So we're really pleased to have this opportunity. And also I would say a deep thank you to my partner, Barb, who has been with me through all these various occasions and challenges, and such an incredibly lovely human being, stood by me through so many challenging times. So special to her, and again to the two of you, Mark and Lindsay, for putting your hearts and souls into this. It's very clear what you have done to make this happen, and I just think it's absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a wonderful evening. Blessings all. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.